Hi everyone, welcome to webinar 4 in our 4-part series on teaching kids with Roblox. And yeah, we're really excited to have you all here. Really pleased with how this series has been going. Hope you've all been enjoying it as well. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. My name's Laker, I'm manager of the education team, and I'm just going to be here moderating. Genevieve is going to be our host. She's our senior curriculum developer. And she pretty much runs all of our education stuff. So anything education, go to her for it. But yeah, so we're going to be covering teaching students 13 and up today. And yeah, I think this will be a really good one. Hope you all enjoyed. We do have some slight new things, changes to the Zoom room as we're getting more used to this. We do have the chat on, as you've seen. Feel free to talk to us there. Although I do encourage you, if you do have a specific question, please use the Q&A feature. That helps flag it for us a little bit easier. And we can also kind of type out responses and stuff like that. So yes, please, any or all questions, send them there. Happy to answer them. And just a reminder, this will be archived on education.roblox.com. So if you want to share these with anybody, if you want to rewatch, they will be up there along with all the slides of the presentation. But yeah, without any further ado, Genevieve, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Yeah. So, all right, let me actually go ahead and share out my screen. Give me just a second to do that. Okay, and don't stop video. All right. So, got that. All right, so today's teacher training webinar is for teachers who have students 13 or older, as I was just saying, and are wondering how Roblox can be utilized in their classroom. So just so you know, everything we're about to cover is also found on our website, education.roblox.com, as our tutorials. You can follow us at Roblox.edu, and we encourage you to do so. And if you've got any pictures of students, please go ahead and tag us there. And if you have any specific questions about your classroom, feel free to reach out to us at education@roblox.com, and that could be, whatever projects you're trying to run, or how to get going, setting up a new classroom, and that kind of thing. Okay, so before we get going, I want to remind you, if you want to follow along while I work in studio, make sure you have a Roblox account, a Mac or PC, and a 2-button mouse, preferably with a scroll wheel. The scroll wheel is not mandatory, but it does make it easier to zoom in and out. I like it. And then the Roblox accounts and the curriculum are free, as is building, creating, and sharing. But we're also going to go over a few of the things that have like a small fee, such as creating groups, and then possibly talk about maybe some of like the developer passes and things like that, some of the monetization aspects. So okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide. So today we're going to cover some of what are the typical topics you would cover for ages 13 and plus. We're going to talk about Lua mostly, quickly showing how some of the basic code fundamentals work in Lua, such as functions, events, as well as conditionals and for loops if there's time. And after that, I want to quickly talk about some of the more advanced concepts, such as algorithms and abstractions, to show how Roblox can be incorporated even into more advanced computer science classes or even AP science classes. So first of all, what type of units can you run in a Roblox classroom? So the most obvious answer is computer science. Also, there's definitely integrated game development. You can bring in arts. You can also bring in interdiscipline learning, just like with any of the other age groups. But a lot of times what we see for these classrooms, you're going to start seeing that those students are looking towards their future careers. And the way in which we see these students use Roblox tends to reflect that. You can also teach some of the entrepreneurship aspects, like focusing on how do you build a brand, how do you market your game, and looking at some of the conscientious monetization. Because beyond being a really great way to develop skills you can use in just about any career, Roblox really is a place where students can start marketing their game and become a game developer right now, rather than being like, hey, I'm going to become a game developer in like 8 years. You can actually share your game out with other people. And the other question is how long are these lessons? And really the duration comes out to as long as you want them to be. Some of the lessons can be taught in an hour. You can easily make like a whole unit out of it for like a semester. So it's kind of just however long you would like. And then any questions before I move on? The next section, I'm actually gonna start talking about Lua as well as showing you how to use Lua.
It doesn't look like we have any questions quite yet, Genevieve. We do have one about learning Lua with books, but I think we might be able to answer that more towards the end, perhaps.
Okay, yeah. I think that's a good call because I'm going to show you some of our resources, and then I can definitely talk about other resources I've found helpful while learning Lua. All right, so first of all, if you don't know what Lua is, it's a typed syntax-based language. So students should be comfortable typing. It's a really great first typed coding language, whether students have done Scratch and are looking for the next challenge, or if this is their first time coding. The nice thing, and what makes Lua great, is that there's far fewer words to type compared to other languages such as Java or C++. There's far fewer keywords to remember. I want to say it's something like 60% of Java, but I'm not like really sure on that one. And best of all, white space is not a concern, meaning your student's code will not break just because they missed one indent 20 line down. So it's really forgiving to new students, and it's really easy for people to pick up quickly. But ultimately, there's no skill cap to it. So I went over some of this a little bit last time in terms of like creating an obby. And so the lesson plan I want to show you today is part of Roblox Developer 101. I'm going to go fairly fast because I want you to see what might get covered over several lessons. And I want to show you where to find this particular lesson. So if you go to our Teaching Remotely page, or actually if you want to find it on our education site, if you click on the Teaching Remotely page, you can actually scroll down to see a list of our curated lessons. And the ones for 13 and plus that we recommend to start with, even though we have quite a few, is the Game Developer 101, which mixes a mix of building and coding and some larger projects built in. And then the Code Fundamental series, which is just really, really coding focused rather than the completion of a complete game. It has lots of small applications intermixed with smaller little projects. All right, so we're going to click on Game Developer 101. So if you're feeling like you're missing something or need more context to some of the concepts as I go through, you can really go through and you can actually find more detail and more depth to every single concept here. So can I get a rough estimate of how many of you guys teach computer science already? Okay, got a few. Nice, all right. How many of you guys are totally new to coding? All right, no hands raised so far, at least that I saw. Okay, good. I just want to know how much I should dial it down. So I'm gonna jump in. So I mentioned last time that the majority of our tutorials were designed as a teaching script, so you can print them out or have them up on the screen and refer to them as you go. You can also allow students who are doing well to move ahead. So here we have our lesson plan, and if you click on the side, you can actually find the step-by-step tutorials. The first part being the creating an obby, but we're gonna focus more on the next part. Okay, any questions so far? I'm gonna keep going. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do actually is we're going to open up Roblox Studio. All right, so if you don't have Roblox Studio, it's the blue icon rather than the silver icon. So there's a couple different ways to open it. So just go ahead and do whichever way is easier for you, either through the website or through using the blue icon. And as I mentioned, Roblox Developer 101 starts with building off of the obby project. One thing I recommend when you're showing people things is to start out in a real world as much as possible, rather than showing just like a blank gray, just the base plate, just because it's a little bit more exciting. It's easier to pay attention when you actually see a real project. So I usually build on a obby I've already created or one that a student has created and go from there because it's just more satisfying. And we're going to, so next, sorry, go ahead. So the first thing I'm going to do, so we're going to assume that you've already have a world. If you don't, you just go ahead, open up any project or open up a base plate as you follow along. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to create a part and we're going to turn it into a trap part. So this means a part that a player can run into and like they'll have to respawn. And the other thing I'm going to do is if you have these windows open, such as the toolbox or the tutorials, I'm going to close that out right now. Okay, so we're going to create a part that's going to act as our trap part. So if you remember, parts tend to spawn right in the middle of your screen. So I like to line that up. And you can go to part. Got that. So that's going to be my trap part. And within the part, we're going to go and add in a script. So if you look over, here's my part. I can hover over it. And I can select script. And that adds a script to my trap part. The other thing I like to do is actually best practice is to rename your part. So I'm going to rename this trap part as we go through. Okay. And here we have good old hello world. So this is usually a great place to start with students. I'll show them hello world. I can teach strings. So if you can change the message. And then to run my plot, you can press play. But the first thing I want to do, so right now if I press play, you're going to see that you can't really see what was output from that print statement or from that print function. So what you want to make sure you have is the output window up. To do that, you go to View, and then you click Output. So that was the View tab, brought up my output window. And now you can see how my print statement ran. And if I click on it, it'll actually even take me over to the source of that. I can go over to the script. All right. So we have that. And if I was assigning homework, so typically at the beginning, your first session, so Game Developer 101 is designed as approximately 5 sessions. I would probably stop right about there and then have students build out their obby after the first session, as well as practice strings and print statements. So you can do that either by just having them printing out strings, or you can give them something like the Story Game Creator Challenge, which they'll get more into depth strings with. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a variable. So I'll just delete my print statement. So creating variables is really, really easy. This is going to be a local variable to the script. So I'm going to type out the keyword local. Now I want this script to make changes to its parent part, the trap part. So I'm going to create a variable that can help me find the script's parent. In this case, I'm just going to call it local trap equals script. And the nice thing here is you notice that it'll autocomplete for you, which is really, really handy with younger students because let's face it, typing can be hard even for me. So they know they're on the right track as they start to type and they can autocomplete it. Script, which is a keyword, dot, we use dot notation, and then parent. And I can autocomplete either by double clicking on the lists or by just pressing enter. So local trap equals script dot parent. So this variable is now directing towards the parent of the script object. All right, let's just check that out. So the first thing I'm going to do, just to kind of test this out, is to change the color. So right now I've got this like really boring, just gray cube right here. Let's change the color. So I got trap. So it knows enough to autocomplete that for me. Dot. You can see the properties of this trap now. Color. So color is a property of that trap because it's a part. And we're going to go equals. Now there's a lot of different ways to change colors in Roblox. The one I like to teach students this age is color 3 from RGB. So if they're working with other programs, they might be familiar with RGB, but that is red, green, and blue, and it goes from 0 to 255. So I'm going to use color 3 dot from RGB. Okay, and we're going to look for 3 values because RGB is 3 values. I want to make my color, I don't know, let's go like a little bit of a violet color. So I'm going to just sort of make up some numbers real quick. So 120, get some red. I'm going to say I don't want any green, and I want some blue. So if I did this correctly, when I press play, this gray part right here should become kind of a violetish, maybe like a little bit of like a red violet. And to test, all I have to do is press play. Okay. Yeah, so now I've got this nice little maroon part over here. So the next thing I can do, so now we have shown how to create variables. You notice I didn't have to say what type of variable. I just made a local variable. I directed it to the parent, and I modified the properties. Okay, so let's have a little bit more fun with this, and let's turn this into a trap using functions. And I think functions are when things really start to shine, because rather than just having some boring outputs that you can't, doesn't, usually it's just text-based, you can actually see how your code changes your game. And I think that really inspires students to realize that code can allow you to express yourself, and it can actually enable them to create like their vision and like the game that they want to create, rather than being like dry and creating calculators. So I'm gonna go and let's start actually creating a function. So I'm not going to get into too much functions. You guys are all teachers, so it seems like you guys have a pretty good idea of what functions are. So to create a function, once again, I just start out with my local keyword.
Oh, Genevieve, real quick request. Do you mind going full screen so we can read it a little bit better?
Thank you for catching that.
Oh, that was actually Matthew Chang. And also, real quick, I think you can increase the font size a bit too, perhaps. I think that's Control Plus.
Oh, it does work? Yeah.
Yep. There we go. Ah, cool.
All right. Excellent. Is that better for you guys?
Yeah, let us know if that is still legible for you, if you need us to tweak anything.
All right, I'm gonna just bump that up a couple more, just in case. All right, so where was I? So now I'm gonna create a function. So local, and pretty much everything in Lua is actually just variables. So in this case, I'm actually just gonna say I'm making a function. I'm gonna name my function. So let's see, I wanna name my function Springtrap. Now to make it a function, I'm gonna put some parentheses on it. And now if I just press enter, it should autocomplete for you. And then you'll nicely be correctly indented as well. All right, so I've got my function. I'm gonna start working on saying, what should my function do? Well, what I want to happen is I want it to go ahead and destroy things, whatever it touches. So the first thing I'm actually gonna do is I'm actually gonna put in a test print statement, because I want to make sure it calls. So print, and you'll notice that like once you put in just like one set of quotation marks, it'll autocomplete the second set of quotation marks because it takes a string. Say trap as sprung. All right, so actually I'm gonna just test that much real quick. So I'm defining my function, and now we're gonna call our function, and that should work. So right here, what we should have happen when we press play is we have created our own custom function. It should print the trap is sprung, and we have called our function. All right, so that much works. You can see, I guess I can't really make this, but if you see down here in the tiny type, it says the trap is sprung, so I know that my function got called. And that's cool and all, but I really only want my function to run when someone touches my trap. So now we get to talk about events. So what's going to happen is whenever the part gets touched, an event's going to fire. So we can use the connect function to connect this function to the event that is going to happen whenever something touches the part. So we're going to do, so this is the part that we want to connect to the trap. And we're going to use the touched event. And you can see, if you're following along, there's like a little lightning bolt next to it, so you know when it's an event. Trap.touched. And now we're going to connect that using a pre-built function that's just called the connect function. And to connect functions, we use a colon. So dots are for properties and often like traversing hierarchy trees, but colons you use for functions. So connect, and you can see like usually we want to use connect, so it's auto-completing that for me. If you type C, you should see that as well. And then to do this, we just insert the name of the function that we want to connect. In this case, spring trap. And if you let it autocomplete, it's going to put it in an extra set of parentheses. So I'm going to delete the extra parentheses. I just need the name. Okay. And now we can test this. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. So we see it. It's down here. The trap is sprung. And really like what's happening, you can see it already went off. It's going off whenever I touch it again and again and again, but it also went off because it touched the ground. So it is just connecting to anything. Anytime anything touches this part, our function is being called. So if I want to turn this into a trap part, so it does something more than just, you know, print functions are fine, but really what's more fun is when things get destroyed, is I'm using the destroy function. So trap is the part that I want to destroy. And this works because it's being passed back from when we called it down on the lower side, or sorry, on that bottom line. We're going to call the function destroy. So now this will destroy, once the trap has been sprung, it will destroy whatever is touching this part. So go ahead and test it. Oops, sorry, I destroyed the part instead of my fault. So what I actually did here, I went a little bit backwards. I destroyed the part and I forgot to actually destroy whatever is touching the part. That's cool, it worked. We do want to eventually do that anyway, so I'm gonna leave that line there anyways. So what I actually want to do is set up a parameter, because what we've been doing all this time is how we're passing in outside information inside of our functions. We want to set up our own custom parameter to pass in whatever is touching the part. So you can set up a parameter of a part. And before I destroy the part, because I want this to keep running, I'm going to destroy whatever touched it. Other part. Destroy. Oops. I'm actually going to delete the trap destroy part because I want to show you guys something real quick. So what I'm going to do, remember that this part here will destroy whatever's touching it. So I want it to get off the ground just a little bit, and I'm going to anchor it in place. because otherwise what's going to happen is as soon as I press play, it's going to fall down and it's going to destroy this platform that it's sitting on, and I won't be able to walk over there to test it. So I have my part. If I touch it, I fall apart. I get destroyed. However, this isn't the most reliable way to set up a trap part for a few different reasons, because it destroys whatever it touches. It doesn't necessarily kill me. I don't know if I can pop up here. Oops. You notice it only destroyed my feet, because that's the only thing that's touching the trap. So if I walk into it with the middle, so I have my body here, actually, and there is the humanoid. So that's the thing that actually helps my avatar walk around. It's like the parent of the avatar and what you see, as well as has properties like health. Then I get destroyed. So what I'm going to do, and before I go on, I'm going to show you how to set up a conditional statement. So to actually make it so it'll find the humanoid and will only destroy humanoids. Any questions so far? All right, I'm going to keep going then. So let's show you how to set up a conditional statement so that what's going to happen is this trap will only spring if a player touches it, rather than springing if like just it happens to touch anything. So what I'm going to say is, so if, actually first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually set up how to find the parent object. So I need to find the parent object of the player. So local, you'll see this a lot in Roblox Groups. Well, most of the time, character is the most common thing to call this particular variable, but you can name it whatever you want. And I do find that students have trouble understanding, like this is just the name of a variable. So if I name it like local which part or local parents part, it doesn't really matter. That's just the name of this particular variable that I'm setting up, but you typically will see this called character. Equals, I want to get the other part that touches its parent part. So we got the parent again. So that's the local parent part equals other part dot parent, or whatever you want to name that variable. Now I want to check to see if this parent part that I just went to go find is indeed a player. Does it have a humanoid object? So now I'm going to type local. I'm naming a different variable. I'm going to name this humanoid, mostly because that makes it easier for me to remember, like, oh, hey, I'm going to go find out if there's a humanoid. Equals parent part. Sorry, parent. Oops, I named that parent. I'm actually going to change that to parent part. There we go. So local humanoid, parent part. And oh yeah, I'm going to go up to the parent part that touched it. And then I'm going to search through its children, all the children of this parent part, to find out if there is a humanoid in there. So whatever I just named that, now we're going to connect a function again. So we're going to find the first child, which is a humanoid. And conveniently, this function is called find first child, which is A. So I'm going to type out find. This is also, it's convenient to remember, but it is one of the longest function names you'll ever see. Find first child, which is A. That's a function. And it takes a string, humanoid. And we're looking for a humanoid. So local humanoid, parent part, or whatever you named this particular variable right here. We're going to use this function. There's different ways to do this. This is just like the most reliable way to do this. Find first child, which is A. Make sure you spell it all correctly. And I'm looking for a humanoid with a capital H. So just sort of best convention is humanoid, like when you're looking, like variables are lowercase here, and then parts are usually going to be capitalized. Okay. So now I'm going to set up my conditional. This is also one of the things I think is really cool about Lua. So if humanoid, so it's just going to check if it found anything or not. Then press enter, and it nicely auto-completed that for me, as well as gave me proper indentation. Once again, if your indentation is off, this code will still run. Then I'm actually going to put other part destroy. So I can just move that up, or I can delete and type out, however you want to do that. So just want to stay on this code for just a second to make sure you guys have time to type. What we've done is we've created variables. We've created a number of variables, taught some dot notation. We learned how to traverse a hierarchy by going to script object and going up to parent. We've changed properties. And just, like, once again, what I love about Lua is style-wise, there should be spaces, but this code would run even if I'm not meeting proper Lua style. So now I'm going to test it. So now, even if I hop up on top, it shouldn't just actually destroy my feet. It should actually destroy the whole character that time. Actually, I'm going to move it down just to double check it a little more easily. Yeah, I should be able to jump up on that a little more easily. You see, it only caught my foot, but the second it destroyed my whole entire character. I feel like I'm not demonstrating very well because I'm being terrible at jumping. So I actually can put it down now because it shouldn't destroy anything else. Oops. So let's see what went wrong. So we only destroyed the other part. Humanoid. I want to destroy the humanoid instead. So definitely at this point, fall on fire. And so it's important. I've actually written the script like a million times, but I'm human and I still make mistakes. So I think that's one thing that's really important to get across to students is that typos are normal. You're going to forget and do things out of order, and it's really great, and that's fine. So, however, what I want to do, what's more dependable, is rather than using just this humanoid destroyed, this humanoid has a built-in health part. So if I go humanoid.health, you'll notice like health is not something defined, it's just something that exists. It hits equals 0. And that will be like a way more reliable way to create this part, as well as it opens up down the line when I'm using like for loops or something like that. I can actually now iterate the health downwards and like cause damage over time. And now you see like definitely rather than just being destroyed, then, which can cause some oddball behavior, like the player will just fall apart every time and reset because my health got set to 0. So that's typically how I sort of scaffold that lesson. Usually I'll go through and discuss sort of each concept more in depth as to like what is a function, what is a parameter, talking more about dot notation, getting used to working up and down a hierarchy, which is going to be really, really helpful later. And then sort of introducing like, hey, look, all right, so here's some code that works. Here's code that works better and is more reliable. And then so slowly you're going to sort of get to this point where here's actually best practice, because there's obviously some things about this code which are not best practice, such as the fact there's no debounce on it. It's going to just keep going. That part, is either going to, if you wanted to, like, let's say if you wanted it to just take off part of the health, you can't do that with this particular code. You're going to have to set up some like damage over time. But they can kind of keep taking this first piece of code and they can take it closer and closer to best practice, or to be able to destroy multiple people or anything that you want. So just kind of right there, I want to stop. Any questions just about the beginning? Maybe like timing of like how I would teach this?
While we're waiting for people to ask any questions about the timing of that, we did have one question that's slightly, which is related, I think, early on. We want to know how you comment in Lua.
Oh, it's funny. So usually one of the first lessons we have is commenting is best practice. Okay, so I'm gonna stop my lesson, or stop my play test, and there is actually a lesson on commenting. So dash dash, and then best practice being, what is this? What does this script do? Turns parent part into a trap. You can say which brings health down to 0, which brings player health down to 0. So that's probably like usually what I would do. We do have block quotes. I don't typically use them. Let's see. And then usually, like if I have students, I usually take more time to have them both comment the script on top, as well as commenting out the functions practice, because I like to get that across. You need to remember what each function does, as well as the script. But like I said, I was going a little fast and sort of skipping over a few lessons in between this particular time. Also, best practice is to rename the parts and the scripts themselves, because if you're working on a project, you're going to have a number of scripts most likely. So I would probably rename this, say, trap script. So I right-clicked, you can F2 if you're on, or double-click. So I'll call this trap script. Best practice here is to go and use capitalization for objects compared to lowercase. And once again, I love showing this because the first time I switched from Python, this blew my mind. This will still run. Like Lua's just like, yeah, that's full. Nothing wrong there. But I do like to try to teach proper indentation. And then what's also really cool about this is the way that this works is that this script will turn any parent part into a trap. So if I want to use the toolbox, I'm gonna get into the toolbox a little bit. Usually what I recommend if people are bringing in toolbox items, because you can see there's lots of cool meshes that they can use, I'm gonna look for a trap. It's best to teach students best practices rather than to tell them to never ever use it. So I'm gonna find, this is just a trap here. Oops, I'm gonna delete that. Best way to get back where you're going is to select a part and then F. And then you can actually, oh weird. I was using this trap earlier and I don't know why it's giant. I'm gonna scale that way, 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 way down. Oops. This trap is gonna be huge. But still, even with some scaling and some rotation, you know, having this trap is way faster than me going out and like modeling my own trap. Just gonna put down over here. So when you're bringing in models from the outside, what you want to make sure, like I just brought in this trap right here, is that there's nothing inside of it. So some of these traps, like some of these models that they're going to have scripts, they're going to have parts. And I happen to pick one that did not have one. Oops. but like make sure there is nothing underneath here. So if there's any additional models or if there's any additional scripts, make sure you delete them because you don't know what they do. But now if I want to, I can take this script and I can go ahead and paste it into here. And this model will also function as a trap. So this one happened to be made all apart, so I changed the color. So the script that we just worked was effective on this trap. I'm actually going to see if I can find real quick. Let's see. I just want to bring in something that has some extra parts. So looks like the first few I chose, oh, because I chose just meshes. But if you do find something like that, just make sure that there's nothing that's being brought in with it if they're going to use things from the toolbox. Okay, any questions so far on just that much?
We have some other questions, but I think they're a little bit more general, and I do want to answer them, but I think we'll save them maybe towards the end for more kind of general Q&A.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is now that I've just kind of shared some really basic code fundamentals, we're going to go back. Let me actually show you some additional coding concepts. So we have like just a lot of information. So what I just showed you was like a very condensed version of like these first 8-9 lessons. So one thing about it being teenagers is like, you know, you can go a little bit faster with them if you feel are ready. However, a lot of times if this is their first coding class, and you probably want to go a little bit slower with them. So really taking time to explain, okay, what are parameters? What are events? What are, you know, using multiple parameters? You know, and then it gets into, we have loops and we have tables. So we have, and we even have more advanced concepts such as working with abstractions and algorithms. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, yeah, so we did that. And, you know, we have Matthew with us, but say we even had an educator incorporate Roblox into the AP CSP class, or planning to. And, you know, you can, what we wanted to have was, we want to allow more students to be able to show to their teachers who were considering doing this. We actually have anecdotally heard about other students who have brought Roblox to their teachers and asked if they could use it as their AP CSP PT, the performance task, you know, for the portfolios. So we did actually create some documentation on like what kinds of algorithms and abstractions could you create and why is it good for collaboration. So we do have some tips and tricks on that. So you can look at team creates. We do actually have collaborative editing tools so students can work in the same script. You know, we do give some examples of like, here's what, you know, an algorithm can look like. It could, maybe it's a store algorithm that checks for price and subtracts price, you know, and what can the sub algorithms and like what are potential abstractions. So, and we also gave some recommendations as well as like, you know, hey, there's some really, really great materials out there already. So like, where can you go to find out more about just like AP class? So our goal is more to be like, how can you incorporate Roblox if you're looking to do that? Because we've had enough requests and we've also heard that it works. So going, yeah, 416 module scripts, which is more advanced if you want, once they start getting into object-oriented coding. So in the beginning, when you're creating traps, you might have dozens of traps. So what if you want to make changes to one of those traps? So as students get more advanced and they start seeing like, hey, maybe I want to create an abstraction and start creating this more object-oriented, I'll create a module script which controls the trap, which each trap will then call from this one centralized module script rather than just having a script within every single trap. So that's, you know, it's got like a low barrier to entry, but really when it comes to engineering and learning like proper coding technique, it's, sky's the limit. Okay. I do actually want to make sure I get to questions. We have about 15 minutes left. I'm going to give some time with that. So what kind of questions do we have at this moment?
Yeah, so the first question came in from Carter Crouch, and I think we started to touch on this a bit, but he was asking, I think this was a follow-up from earlier, about resources such as books, tutorials, online classes, like any resources we may be able to point people to that teach Lua.
So I would actually really just, you might want to start with our own education site. We have some good pages on, particularly Roblox Lua. Other sites that I have found to be really helpful is just like the Lua pages. What's it, lua.org? And there are some additional books online. The only thing is they've been written in various points in time. So I don't know if I would strongly recommend any of the books because I haven't really read any other than Brandon LaRouche's book. And I know like he's been thinking about updating that one, but I can't personally vouch for them. So I have found between our sites and probably I would say the online Lua documentation to be the most helpful for me personally. And then we're seeing what we can do about getting some books. And so we might have some news there in the future, I will say. So online classes, so other online classes though, like there are a lot of teachers at this point who are teaching Roblox. So there are some Udemy classes that cover a lot of the beginning concepts that we do. So I haven't seen as many into the more advanced topics. I would say once you start getting outside of the range of like what's covered in these code fundamental series, then you're probably a good candidate to start checking out our developer forums if you're building and you need to learn more about coding. There's also just like lots of scripts and recipes on the developer hub for things that you can start picking apart. So kind of, I think my best recommendation is to go through like the code fundamental series. And then as you are learning, start looking for recipes and probably just become an active member of the dev forum.
And just to highlight, just to let you know, I'll know where those are. The Dev Hub, our developer resource, is developer.roblox.com. And the Dev Forum is devforum.roblox.com. And those are also free resources. They're geared a little bit more towards professional developers or hobbyists, but absolutely, they're, again, completely free to use. And yeah, you as teachers or your students may also find them to be helpful.
Additionally, if you have students who are looking for extra mentorship or looking for lessons, there are a number of great educators on our site. Roblox educators, let's see if I can bring it up real quick. Yeah. So if you want to look for some online resources, there's all kinds of teachers right now who are offering classes, everything from free Udemy courses to like ID Tech, who offers free tutorships. Or not free, sorry. They have online tutors, and then Alvin Blocks, who, he's a young developer in our community who has been making videos since he was in his early teens. So a lot of, there's all kinds of different ways you can learn online as well. Okay.
Yeah, we also have another question. This is from someone who I think is actually a student, but I think this is a pretty relevant question. They're wondering about, they've heard that if you learn one coding language, all the other ones that are similar are easier to learn. Would you say that's true?
I would 100% back that statement. So I have taught and been around, I would say just about every single coding language there is, whether it's Java or Python or C++ or C# or Ruby. Like once you learn one of them, then that sort of unlocks like what the key terminology is for all of them. So there's probably some concepts if you're new to coding that I just covered where the vernacular of the words were a little strange to you. Things like events or parameters, conditionals, which are if-then statements. So once you learn this basic language of what coding is in one language, you tend to know what you want to do in another language. So picking it up and understanding like what's happening is a lot easier. So I would say I'm not an expert in most coding languages, but I can look at just about anything and kind of get a gist of what's going on because I've got enough experience in a different language, even if I don't know like the correct function to call or if I don't know like how to set up a print statement. But yeah, it definitely makes things easier. So I always tell people when they're like, oh, which language should I learn first? Whichever one you're likely to stick to, whatever one will come out with a project you're likely to create. If you like robots, go find a robot and, go make a robot. If you like games, this is a great place to start. Yeah, I would say whatever you'll stick to is most important. Okay, anything else?
We did get another question from Michelle Murray. Is there a certification officially for teachers to obtain that is from Roblox?
There is not a certification program at this time. It's actually something we've been considering and we hope to keep looking into, like maybe we'll have someday, but at this time there is not. And I guess my question for you is, are you looking to have a certification you can display to your students, or are you looking for more of teacher training? Either way, we'd love to know, because like the more that we can show there's demand for something, then that will help us prioritize our projects. Teacher training? Okay, yeah. So the nice thing about our tutorials and our lesson plans is they're designed for anyone in mind, because we know there's so many history teachers and PE teachers and stuff who want to come in and help their students or in a computer science class. So the way our tutorials are designed is that everything is very, very step by step, and we don't assume any prior coding knowledge or any prior game development knowledge. So if you're totally new, like right from like, hey, this is a print function. We'll describe what functions are for you. We'll show you how to work with strings. So we do spell it out step by step by step, because we know there's so many teachers in the world who aren't necessarily computer science majors, but who really want to teach.
Okay. And yeah, I think it seems like we're having kind of a conversation with Michelle. I think I'd like to bring it up live as well. So Michelle's bringing up that she wants to teach with Roblox, but she's getting some concerns from their tech directors because it's not set up quite like Minecraft where you have explicit control over servers. I was thinking maybe you could talk about VIP servers a bit, perhaps.
Yeah, I am going to back up a little bit, because I think the first thing, there's a few different ways in which you can reach your comfort level. So there's things like right here in Roblox Studio, there is no chat. So it's just me working in this particular file. You don't need to have Roblox platform installed in order for Studio to work, but it is a great way to connect, as well as to, I would say start setting some digital civility expectations. If you do want to connect your students together right now, a lot of us are virtual and online. You can actually do Team Create through Studio. Or if you want to play games, online games that are already created where you're going to be on the Roblox platform, you can also set up VIP servers. So with VIP servers, you pay a nominal amount of Robux. It's usually somewhere between like 10 and 100 Robux, which is the equivalent of about 10 cents to about $1 for 1 month of server, which is only whoever you invite to that server. So that's the solution if you want to play games. There's also controls when it comes to chats, whether or not chat is on. But I would say like, it's definitely a valid concern, but I think you also realize there's a lot of different ways that you can like go toward, like express yourself, or like bringing your students that will meet your particular comfort level. And I would say every single school is different, but I like to personally give students the tools to behave appropriately and to learn proper online digital citizenship, because they're going to be online at some point.
And we do have more resources on education.roblox.com that talk about classroom setup and security and stuff like that. If you do want to direct any of your school staff to that may have concerns, we do try to make sure that we answer a lot of that there. But also, if you do have specific questions, do please feel free to reach out to education@roblox.com.
Yeah, so a great thing you can do is actually send them to the Roblox remote site. And we do have articles on collaborating together using Team Create, as well as playing together using things like VIP private servers. And just like, hey, you know, interacting online, how can you foster a positive culture? We even did a webinar on it, the second webinar with Laura Higgins, who is our digital civility expert. And, you know, we work very closely with a lot of like digital civility and organizations, FOSSI and Connect Safely, who are like, how can you make the digital world a safe place for students? All right, so we're at 427. One more way in which you can actually bring students together is actually through groups. So let me bring it up. I didn't get to hit this last time. I want to bring this up really quick. An alternative is they're creating a group where students can join that group and you can share out projects. You can also make announcements. That's about 100 Robux, and that's, you know, goes on forever. And the way that you can see groups is when you go to your side nav, there's just like this groups menu. If that's, sometimes you'll see if it's collapsed, you have to expand it. And so this is just an example group I have. So if you want to make announcements, you can say like, hey, we're going to have a virtual field trip today. And you can post a link to your VIP server that only allows in your students. You can make announcements. You can also actually have games. So if I'm in here, if I want to create, let's actually see if I can open from Roblox. This might take a second because I'm using Zoom at the same time. You can actually go through, you can share games as a group. So if I go to my games, I have group games. So you can see like that example group I had, anyone who's in that group would have access to this game. So that can be good or bad, but it's actually really, really helpful in how most of our developers also create games. So you can see Roblox Creator Challenge. All these games are made as groups. Like Peter and I are both part of these groups. So we were able to work with people who we'd never met in real life, like across the world, and to create like these environments that we would not have been able to otherwise. And we could work in them at the same time. So, because there was the question about groups, I did want to quickly hit that. But we're just about at time. Any last questions?
Yes, Michelle, and that'll actually segue nicely into the closing here. So yes, this webinar is going to be shared with the public. We will have this uploaded to YouTube either probably tomorrow. I don't think it'll be later today, but we'll get this up very soon, along with Genevieve's slides, the presentation. So all this will be publicly available. Feel free to check it out. Recommend it to your friends. Absolutely. We will have links on education.roblox.com where you can see this and all of the other webinars that we did in this series. This is the last one that we're doing for now, for this particular series, but we definitely liked how this has gone, like the results of this. We are thinking about any kind of future series, so please do feel free to get in touch with us either through email, education@roblox.com, or you can reach out to us at Twitter. That's a Roblox EDU, I believe, at Roblox EDU. I don't tweet so much, so I keep
at Roblox
mixing
EDU.
up. Yes, at Roblox EDU. Yes, we definitely want to hear your feedback for how you think this webinar series went, and also for any future series you might like to see. So yeah, please do keep in touch with us. And yeah, when we come up with other series, if we do, we'll definitely be tweeting about that. We'll also have that up on education.roblox.com. But yeah, hope that this has been helpful for all of you. Hope to hear from all of you soon. And again, I really want to thank you all for participating, and hope that you, your students, your loved ones are all safe in these stressful times. But until we talk again, yeah, have a good one, everyone.
Thank you guys very much. And if anyone has any questions, definitely reach out. Bye.
All right, bye.